Heartland with McKoy are not necessarily the opinions of Walnut Media USA, management, station manager Janelle Reeves, any particular denomination or religion, the mailman, the church lady, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here's the Talk of the Heartland with McKoy on KCRO, the Heartland's Christian voice.
Good afternoon. It is the 22nd day of August in the Lord's year 2022. Lots of twos in our date today. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Talk of the Heartland here on AM 660, FM 106.7 in Lincoln and all around the world at KCRO.com. Today is going to be a different kind of day. I asked Pastor Tony to come in today because we're going to be talking about something that I'm rather, how would you put my emotion on this? Serious?
Super enthusiastic.
Oh, you're such a nice guy. You're like the kindergarten teacher that when my mom said, "How's Mac doing?" she said, "He's excitable." Yeah. All right, so that's good. I appreciate that, and you'll figure out what we're going to talk about here in a minute. But right now, what I want to do is I want to give away a 4-pack of tickets to the Collingsworth Family Fall Sing Concert. That is happening this Wednesday, August 24th at 7 p.m. in Lincoln, Nebraska. And if you call right now, 1-402-422-1600, a voice will come on that phone and you just push 2 because you want to talk to Janelle and tell Janelle on the phone that Mac said she's a great mom. Yeah. Great mom. And she'll give you a 4-pack of tickets so you can go see that concert coming up this weekend. It's going to be, I don't know if you've ever heard the Collingsworth family. I'll tell you what, when we get out of the next break, we'll get this show started. I'll try to play a little bit of Collingsworth family for you. They're incredible. You may know them if you're a longtime gospel singer. You may know them as they were part of the Gaither people that traveled with the Gaithers all the time, and now they're out on their own. So anyway, a 4-pack of tickets are yours to call at 422-1600, obviously area code 402. 422-1600. Ask for Janelle, the station manager. Actually, it's just a automated thing, and she will take your numbers and names and etc., and you'll have 4 seats with whoever you want to bring down to the Collingsworth Family Fall Sing. And again, that's happening this 24th, that's this Wednesday, 7 p.m. in Lincoln. All right, congratulations to those who take the time to call and win, and we appreciate it. All right, so my guest today is Tony from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Council Bluffs. You have Bible study at 9:30, right?
Yes.
And then at 10:30 is your service.
11 o'clock.
Oh, 11. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And what's the street that you guys are on?
It's on Valley View Drive.
Right, Valley View Drive. All right. Good church. I'm going to be giving part of my testimony there this Saturday. So if you want to hear an old man cry, you just come and listen. And that'll be at the 11 o'clock time. All right. So, Tony, is there anything out there, and you're a pastor, you have been in theology most of your life because you were raised in the church.
I was actually not raised in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I was raised in a Christian household, though.
Okay, all right.
But I did do my undergrad in theology, and then I have a Master of Divinity from Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary. So you could say that almost the past close to going on 9 years I've spent going through theology and the like.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you a question. And by the way, as you know, if you listen enough, we don't set things up here. He has no idea what I'm about to ask him.
I really don't.
And I don't do that to cause a problem. I do that because I want it transparent. It's like when we have pastors on the show and I give them my questions, they don't know the questions in advance. I do that again for transparency reasons. I don't want a prepared answer. I want what comes from the heart. And I knew I could have Tony on today, and he'd give me that. But he's kind of my what would you call a referee? No, you're not a referee because there's not another side. You're kind of my coach who's going to pull me out of the game for a minute and say, hey, you better get your stuff together. You're getting a little crazy on that radio out there. You got to be careful. And here's the question, and today we're going to take the question down a path, in the beginning at least, of something that's happened just in our country here in the last month. And, of course, the question is always, who cares about politics? Who cares about social injustice? Da-di-da-di-da. What I care about is Jesus, and that you get a chance to meet him, either by his hounds of heaven coming mugging you, or you seek him out and he finds you. You may be lost, but he knows exactly where you're at. That's the most important thing in my life when it comes to my ministry with Jesus. But one of my favorite questions to ask when I have pastors in is, when are you and I as Christians allowed to use force? Now, that's going to be the operative word, so we're going to have to define that. But allowed to use force to advance the kingdom. So you've got some key words in here. First of all, Christian, force, and advance the kingdom. And we are not specifically talking, if you've been around the last couple days, we've talked about this with other pastors. We are not specifically talking about or ruling out, I don't like to say physical force. Well, I guess that's the best phrase for it. We decided as a country and as Christians that we could not allow Mr. Hitler to overrun God's chosen people, the Israelites, the Jews. And so we entered into World War II, lost a lot of our men and women, but we freed the Jews. We freed our brothers and sisters in God. I can't say in Christ because a lot of Jewish people don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. But so we went out and used force. We said, hey, you're not going to genocide an entire population of God's most chosen children. We're not going to let you do that. Now, obviously, Japan coming in and bombing the heck out of Pearl Harbor didn't help. But I think it was the souls of Christians all around the world who said, you cannot do this to my forefathers and foresisters, the Jewish people. So that's the question we're going to talk about today, and we're going to start with abortion. When are you, me, us, allowed to use force? And you can define force any way you want. You could make it politics, which would mean legislate the answer. You could use, you could use politics. You could legislate it. You could, boycott things that were supporting the abortion clinics around the country. Because this is the question. Just as the Jews in the 40s were being eliminated, we just got done eliminating 68 million unborn children. And I am very, very, very glad that Roe versus Wade was overturned or corrected or whatever you want to say. Very glad. But it makes me think, where were the Christians? Where were the priests and the pastors and the reverends, back in 1973 when they passed this law that says, yeah, you can kill them whenever you want. And then it even got to the point where we were allowing them to be born. And their life would still be taken. So the question is, what should we have done? Of course, it's yesterday's news. But here's the next question. What's going on in our country right now so that my little grandson, Everett, who's 4 years old, doesn't come up to me in 20 years and say, Grandpa, we're Christians. How did you ever allow this to happen? Whatever this is, and we'll talk about what this is, because it may be something different to you as it is different to me. I've got some of mine, but I also want to hear yours. Now, you can email me at M-A-C, like macaroni, at kcro.com. Love to have an answer on that from you. It's your voice we want to hear. Taking our first break. When we come back, well, what should we do? Should we have taken force 50 years ago when the Senate decided that we could kill unborn children. And as the conversation goes today, what is it not too late for? Because it's too late now for those babies. But what are we heading into right now that maybe we as Christians ought to stand up and show them who we are? We love Jesus, and you're not going to do this to my children or grandchildren. All right, we're coming back. Remember the telephone number to call if you would like to win that 4-pack of tickets to the Collingsworth Family Sing coming up this Wednesday, the 24th in Lincoln. You should call 402, obviously, 422-1600, and it is extension 2, and that's Dear Janelle. So we'll be back with your answers and more questions here on AM 660, 106.7 in Lincoln, and all around the world at KCRO.com.
KCRO is seeking partners interested in sharing God's message to our listeners. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss the mission of your business, organization, or ministry and how it might fit into the KCRO lineup. For more information, go to KCRO.com and contact Janelle.
David Brooks here, founder and president of Retire Smart. If something is worth doing, it's worth doing right, especially when it comes to your retirement. But how do you know whether you've done it right for your retirement? Life can be so unpredictable. You may wonder if you're truly ready. Well, you're not alone. That's why we've developed the Smart Checklist Challenge. Nearly everyone approaching retirement shares basically the same fears. Have you saved enough? Will the stock market downturn derail your retirement? Will tax increases affect your income? What if you need to go to a nursing home? Will your spouse's future be secure? Call for your complimentary SMART checklist at 402-369-7777. That's 402-369-7777.
Smart Wealth LLC is a federally registered investment advisor under the Investment Advisors Act of 1940 and an affiliate of Retire Smart. Registration as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Information about Smart Wealth LLC can be found by visiting www.advisorinfo.sec.gov and searching by the advisor's name.
Tune in Saturday mornings at 7 for The Bible Says with Ashley Day.
This is Ashley Day, inviting you once again to join us as we seek to answer the question, what does the Bible say?
Saturday mornings at 7 on KCRO.
Greetings, I'm Jackie Marr with Share His Light Ministries. And in our studio in Blair, Nebraska, I have Beth Holdridge, the president of a new school. Hello.
Hello, Jackie. How are you?
Good. Now, what's going to happen next year?
We are excited because we're going to be opening up a new school in Blair. It's a private academy, classical academy, liberal arts, and offering K through 8 education starting next year.
That's fantastic. So you're going to be meeting at the Catholic Church right in Blair?
Yes, there's a school building, that sits right behind the church. We will start the day in the church with Mass, and then as it's offered, and then we'll go across the driveway to the school.
Okay. And so we really need to tell people, again, the name of it and how to get more information right off the bat. We'll do it again at the end.
Okay.
But tell me the name.
It's St. John Paul II Classical Academy. You can reach us at sjp2ca.com and at 402-218-4020.
Perfect. 218-4020. Okay. So this is a part of a national type of organization. You're not just launching on your own.
Correct. It's so we have tied in with a group called ICLE, I-C-L-E. It's the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education, and they are helping us build and design our school. We've also been visiting Christendom Academy in Omaha, and they're about 50th and Q. They've been very, very helpful. There's also a high school in Omaha that has the same type of liberal education, and that's called Chesterton Academy. And so it's just been very good to have some camaraderie and some shared. And that's really kind of how we got invited to St. Borgia.
And this is like a hands-on learning, kind of like a Montessori, if you want to think about it.
Very much so.
Beth Holdridge, president of the St. John Paul II Classical Academy. I got that right?
Yes, you did. sjp2ca.com. Reach out to us at 402-218-4020.
Super. Thanks so much for coming in, and God bless you.
God bless you too, Jackie. We appreciate you.
The Heartland's Christian Voice, KCRO.
Welcome to the Monday edition Talk of the Heartland here on AM 660, FM 106.7 in Lincoln and all around the world at KCRO.com. I'm Mac McKoy, and my guest today is Pastor Tony from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Council Bluffs. which has a Bible study at 9:30 and then regular service at 11. And you guys are on Valley View Drive in Council Bluffs. Today, here's the question. I always ask this question of my guests when I'm here, but today I decided that I would ask this question of myself, and Tony is the smart one in the room. So I'm serious about that.
Debatable.
Well, not in my head. So you're kind of the guy that needs to pop me upside the back of the head if I take this thing too far, because this is a real tough subject for me, and maybe it's for everybody. So the question is this: when does a Christian, so there's the first operative word, Christian, allowed to use force, that's the second operative word, and the third is to advance the kingdom. Now, force is what you decide it is. And I had somebody answer this question last week that I thought was just awesome. Cease without praying. Every Christian in this country goes to church every day. They don't go to work. They don't go to McDonald's so you can get your fries. If they're a policeman, they don't go to work. I'm sorry. You stand up and you say, no, we're done. And see, that's not force. But America is going to quickly learn how tough it would be to run our lives, our social lives, as well as our Christian lives, if we Christians stood back and said, well, okay, you want to do that? Fine. One of the things we're going to talk about later, well, I ask you if you had one. Have you come up with one, or are you just ready to catch my fly balls?
You talking about definition of force?
Well, no. Well, yeah, you could give that if you wanted to, but obviously I'm going to talk about Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
Do you have one that you would also put in that junction, that we as Christians have got to step up and do whatever it takes to advance the kingdom and not let these things happen ever again?
I would say that the thing that I feel the most strongly about is voices calling for the end of separation of church and state.
Okay.
My faith tradition believes in separation of church and state, and any talks of like a Lauren Boebert coming on and saying we need to get rid of this nonsense is extremely alarming to me as a Christian. So I would say that if people are saying we need to break down these walls of church and state, I would say that as Christians, we need to take a good look historically at what has happened when church and state come together and what that has done, not only for Christians who live in that country, but also for those that are not Christian.
Okay, that's good. Go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Are you talking about Ukraine?
I'm talking about just any type of state that claims that it is a Christian state,
okay,
that the official religion is Christianity, that there is no separation of church and state, because separation of church and state is actually historically a very recent phenomenon. Whereas, let's just go back to time of the Reformation period. You had the medieval church, you had the Catholic Church in charge of its papal states, where no separation of church and state, and you did have groups that, when the Reformation started, there was persecution. But then you look at Protestants like Zwingli in Switzerland, and they themselves ended up becoming persecuting because they combined their church and state together. And it literally just became, if your brand of Christianity is not in line with the main state form of Christianity, unfortunately, it usually led to persecution. I mean, look at the Pilgrims that came over on the Mayflower. They were fleeing England from the Anglican Church. So it's really alarming to me when, as a thought, when we say, yes, Christian state, Christian state, Christian state, and I just sit back and I go, which form of Christianity are you talking about? Because there's a lot of differing beliefs on things.
And let me ask you a question. Could you replace the word different kinds of Christianity with different kinds of Christian religion? Because I don't think it's Christianity as a whole. I would tell you that it's religion that stops us from using force, that stops us from going as far as we can. Because all of a sudden we become unacceptable Christians to the rest of them. I'll never forget one lady said to me one time, well, you're just not a good enough Christian. And that stuck. That hurt. That was before I knew Jesus. And finally, a friend of mine in Bible study, so now let's jump ahead 10 years, said, Mac, there's no such thing as a good enough Christian or a bad Christian. You either are or you're not. Jesus will decide the difference. It's not our job to do it. Well, okay, so let's take what you were just talking about. So let's say the state of Nebraska decided tomorrow that we were going to adopt Christianity, the religion of Christianity, let's say through the eyes of Catholicism. So you'd have Episcopalians, Catholic, and Lutherans. That this is going to be the way you're going to worship God, or you're not going to be allowed to worship God. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I guess I would say that it is in the case where now, so if you pass legislation, if you're a Christian state, that this is the only acceptable form of worship. You could look at outside of Christianity, you just look at any country where there is a no separation, religious freedom. No religious freedom, and look at what people are allowed to do and not allowed to do in those areas. And to me, that actually, if you start, let me put it this way, if you have to use force to convince people to worship Jesus Christ, I don't think we're reading the same Bible.
Agreed. And you just started the debate. And that was a great thing you said. I don't even know if you realize it, but you did. Because now the definition that we're working on is force. What kind of force can a Christian use to advance the kingdom? Because using force has to be defined by somebody, or it'll be everything goes. And I don't want that as a Christian. You know, if this was 1973 all over again and Roe versus Wade had been made law, I would not ask people to go burn down or murder those people involved in abortions.
Can we divide force maybe into 3 categories?
Sure, I'm going to write it down.
Can we say they're spiritual force? So that would be like somebody praying, because if you believe in the power of prayer, you believe that you're asking for God to work. So that, in a sense, could be asking for God to, a sort of spiritual force. You could then say there is physical force, which would be any type of, I guess you could argue violence or the like. And then I would say political or ideological force of some people call it the marketplace of ideas. But I would say that those 3 categories, you could probably look at different force within each of those.
Okay. I would agree with you on that. Now, a minute ago, I mentioned that what if every Christian in this nation decided not to go to work for 1 week? What type of force do you put that under? Spiritual? Or is that political?
I think that I don't think that they're necessarily separate from each other. I think that they're intertwined within each other. So if every Christian decided to not go to work for a day, you may want to ask, okay, first, is there a spiritual reason why they're not doing that? Like, what's the spirituality behind it? Is there a religious reason or something? Let's just use let's just say somehow there was a vision that was given to Christians, and God said, "Don't go to work today," or something like that. I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to think of an example of why they wouldn't go. Okay, let me put it this way: as a Seventh-day Adventist, we don't like to do work on what we consider Sabbath.
Saturday.
And we believe that we have a biblical mandate for that. We do allow, obviously, for people to do work if it's helping other people, but there's a spiritual aspect of that. But if every Christian takes off, let's just go with the physical would be literally them not going to work. Physically, they're staying there. And then maybe politically or ideologically, maybe there was a political reason behind what they were doing. Maybe it was like a protest of something, because the political will influence the physical, and there may be a spiritual element behind it. So they're kind of intertwined with each other.
Okay. By the way, that's Tony. He's the lead pastor at the SDA Church in Council Bluffs. That's on Valley View Drive, Bible study at 9:30 and service at 11 a.m. Okay, so let's use another example. Do we have time? Yeah, a couple minutes. rather than saying, everybody who's a Christian, stay away from your work this week, because we're going to show you the power that we have. We're going to show you the force that we can implement in this country without ever raising a finger or saying a bad word or doing anything. We're just not going to come to work that day. Let's see how your day goes. I'll give you one better. Teachers. Right now, we are in such bad shape when it comes to the number of teachers we need. We need God back in the schools. If they would just have never taken God out of the schools, we wouldn't have so many of these issues we have. So, all the Christian teachers or educators stay home for a day or a week. I mean, my heavens, they did it when they weren't getting paid what they wanted to. Can't they do it to get God back in school?
I actually disagree with bringing God back into the public school.
Okay, tell me why.
I believe that actually breaks down separation of church and state. I would say if you're going to bring God back into the school, you now have to allow for other religious expressions to now be brought in and taught. And so it's a question of either none or all. And
what would God want?
What do you mean, what would God want?
Well, would God want none or all?
That's a tough question because, again, if you have separation of church and state, and again, we're talking public schools. We are allowed here at private institutions, private schools, you can have that element of Christianity. There's Catholic schools, there's Adventist schools, a different faith tradition. So we're not saying that God is not allowed at all in any type of school. But in the public sphere, the publicly funded school, by taxpayer dollars of people who are both Christian and non-Christian, maybe other religions, if you only put the Christian God as the main point in there, that in a sense is it's a way of showing force, I think.
Okay, I got to take a break, but I don't want to stop this chain. But that's exactly what I'm talking about, Tony. What are we going to do to get God back in our schools? What are our government schools? Okay, the government owns them. By the way, those are the same people that Hitler worked for. The government owned them. So now we're not going to allow God back in school because we're afraid the Muslims or the Hindus or the Jews, whatever, would come back in and say, well, we want our religion taught too. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, again, if you're going to bring in one religion, one God, now you have to now allow for other expressions, and so that can open up a can of worms, I think, really. And a perfect example is I believe it was the Oklahoma City Hall where they had the 10 Commandments, and they took it down because the Satanists there were arguing that if you're going to leave that 10 Commandments up there and allow for that religious expression, then you should be allowing for our religious expression and the like.
Okay.
And you're showing preference.
All right. So this is a good conversation, and we'll pick it up when we come back. But my answer to you would be, I'm sorry, this is going to sound rude. I don't care. I want my God in those classrooms teaching Christianity. It's not fair that the Muslims can't come in. Well, you've got your own country. Go back then. I mean, we are a country of freedoms. And freedoms isn't just that another religion can step forward and say, hey, we get to study our religion in school if you'd get to do Christian. That form of freedom is for us to be able to say, no, sorry. If you want to start a Muslim school, you can do that. We're okay with that. You can do a parochial school. But if you're in government schools, we teach about God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus. And we have the book, and we teach the Bible. That's what I would aim at. All right, Tony, you okay taking a break?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we're coming back. Listen, let me give you that phone number again. We're giving away 4 packs of tickets to the Collingsworth Family Fall Sing, which is happening this Wednesday, August 24th, at a church in Lincoln. And I would ask that if you would like that 4-pack of tickets. By the way, the church is College View Church in Lincoln. By the way, the doors open at 6 and starts at 7 o'clock. And if you would like a 4-pack of tickets on that, then you certainly call right now, to area code 402-422-1600. It is category 2. You want to talk to Janelle, and she'll set you up with those tickets. From all of us here at College View Church in Lincoln and KCRO all around the world at kcro.com.
Observed that teens are not big children, they're young adults and should be treated as such. I wonder if you agree with that. On the next Focus on the Family, Dr. Ken Wilgus explains how a technique called progressive emancipation can help make the teen years much more pleasant for you. That'll be next time on Focus on the Family with Jim Daly.
Focus on the Family, weekdays at 7:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. on KCRO, 660 a.m. in Omaha and 106.7 FM in Lincoln.
A smoke-free environment is the only way to fully protect from the dangers of secondhand smoke. That's why smoke-free policies are so important to me, whether it's in my car, apartment building, or when I'm dining outdoors. There's no place for secondhand smoke or e-cigarette aerosol. Breathe easier knowing the facts. Visit smokefree.ne.gov. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska.
Do you need a little good news in your life? Tune in to Spotlight Good News Omaha on KCRO 3 times daily, weekdays at 5:30 a.m., 9:45 a.m., and 10:15 p.m. with your host, Tim Janisewski on KCRO, the Heartland's Christian voice.
Now your forecast for KCRO for Omaha, Council Bluffs, and Lincoln. Clear skies and quiet tonight with lows around 63. Winds out of the southeast around 5 miles per hour. Mainly clear skies and quiet tomorrow. High temperatures reach up to 89. Lows level off around 66. Tomorrow night, partly cloudy skies. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times. Wednesday, with daytime highs approaching 91. 87 Thursday. I'm weatherology meteorologist Paul Trombley on KCRO. Right now, 85.
KCRO.
Good afternoon. It's the Monday edition of Talk of the Heartland. Here on KCRO, we are on August 22nd, 2022. My guest today is Pastor Tony from the SDA Church in Council Bluffs. That's on Valley View Drive. And their Bible study, Sabbath study, is at 9:30. And then, of course, we have a regular service at 11 o'clock every Sabbath morning. So that's where Tony works. And I asked Tony to come in today because I wanted to talk about a difficult subject. And I knew that his, well, how do I say this? You're probably a better man than I am when it comes to being Christian.
Disagree.
I know. Well, I know what you're trying to say, but, well, we'll just continue to talk about it, then we'll see how we come out on this. And I like where you took this conversation. So the question is this: when is a Christian allowed to use force to advance the kingdom? And you brought up church versus, or state versus church.
Separation of church and state.
Right. Now, you understand that does not mean the state says what religion we're going to follow. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
It just says that because of what you believe, you can't be persecuted in work or in school or other places.
Well, the state can't also give preference to a certain religion over another. I believe. We might have to go to the First Amendment.
Yeah, you might. I think that's probably more of a First Amendment. Because what we've been talking about here, I think the greatest answer for America, I mean, I'd literally, if I had a widget to cut off, I'd cut it off and give it to you. We have got to get God back in government schools. I believe that we are in the place we are in 2022, where everything is backwards or upside down, whatever you want to call it. 30 years ago, what was right back then, today is wrong. And 30 years ago, what was wrong, today is right. That's confusion, and God is not a God of confusion. So I would immediately say that we're going to teach the Bible in every single class in school from kindergarten to the 12th grade. Now, I would also add, if someone wanted if someone didn't want to take that class, they could. They didn't have to. You know, it doesn't need to be forced upon him, but it's got to be offered.
So why does Christianity get that preference at a government public school?
Why not?
And well, let me ask you this: which form of Christianity are we teaching?
God came down to earth with skin on, was born to a virgin, had a 3-year ministry. During that time, died on the cross so all of our sins could be forgiven, and we get the free gift of salvation. That's it.
Not every Christian. What do you mean by? So let me ask you this: are we teaching?
By the way, this is why I wanted you on today.
Are we teaching Calvinism? Are we teaching Arminianism?
No, we're not going to teach either one of those, because you can choose if you want to be a Christian. What I just said a minute ago is all you need to believe in. It's all you need to believe in to be a Christian. Right or wrong? Am I wrong? You can tell me.
So are you saying that it's a choice that one chooses to be a Christian?
Well, you and I would say no.
I would say, yeah, it's a choice. I'm Arminian in my theological tradition.
So Jesus didn't come and get you?
Well, I believe that the salvation that Jesus offers, it is a choice that I can choose to accept or reject.
And what if you reject it? Then what? Then where are you?
Then if I reject Jesus, when I reject...
No, you just reject Arminianism.
If I reject Arminianism, then I'm probably a Calvinist, and I believe that God predestined for everything to happen that it was, and that God already had determined who was saved and who was lost.
Okay, and there's enough evidence through Scripture in the Bible for either one to work, right?
I would say people would argue. There's strong arguments on either side. Yeah, they're not in agreement with each other.
All right, and what I would ask you to consider, and I mean that's why I have you on today. You tell me I'm crazy, but I would say that's the problem that other people have brought to the table. Well, who's Jesus? Who's God? What religion are you going to let them teach? You know, if you folks got enough Muslims that you want the Quran taught in a government school, fine, be it. But just like my son or daughter, who doesn't have to take that course, the Muslim children don't have to take the Christian course either. I'm not forcing it upon them. We don't even have it available. And by not having it available, how does a child who goes to Sunday school or church with his parents and then goes to 6th grade and hears the teacher say, well, there is no God? How can she say that?
I don't think a teacher's allowed to actually say that in a public school, that there is no God, because that is a statement that's a religious statement in a sense.
Well, they are. Okay, I mean, I've got a lot of teacher friends in parochial Christian and government schools, and they will tell you that if you're in a government school and you're teaching, you can't favor God, but you can certainly say there isn't such one.
I would argue that if you have while I understand that they can't speak favorably to a God, I would argue that if I was to talk to their administration, I don't think they're allowed to make that kind of a statement that there is no God, because that is an atheistic state. That is putting a preference on a certain religious view of things.
All right, I don't disagree with your thinking.
So if one does that, I would probably say that if you're a parent and your child comes home and says, yeah, my teacher said there is no God, I would definitely contact the administration, because that's going over the line.
So then do you think all the parents of the children in that specific school or school district get a vote on whether they want to have Christian classes in their schools? And if the Christian voters say yes, then it happens. And if too many people say no, that it doesn't. I mean, do we really leave it up to us on a one single point with a vote? Because America's, we're good at adding all that pork, to those bills and all this, and yeah.
I don't know necessarily how the First Amendment relates to state laws in education, but that's what the Board of Education is probably going to be operating on, was the state law of education, and I don't know how that relates to the federal level. So I don't know when it comes to curriculum and what they want to introduce or not introduce. I don't know necessarily if it's up to a school board meeting where the parents are just like, well, we want this. I don't know if that actually it would be an agenda item for that.
Let me ask you a question. Who is it up to?
It's up to it. From my understanding, and I'm limited, it's dealing with the relationship between the federal government and the state government in regards to education, about what things are considered to be acceptable, that are constitutionally allowed to be said, and what things are not.
Do I have your permission to tell you something that I disagree with?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're letting the government make their decision. You're going to say the government of the school board and the government of that whatever are going to get together and decide what's governmentally fine. So now we're back to we Christians sit back, turn the other cheek, allow 68 million babies to be murdered. We're all going to have to stand before God that one day. And I'm hope. I pray to God. I pray to him himself that he knows my heart, that was never something I would approve of. But if you're going to leave it up to the government, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, our government is a representative government where you elect your officials. So, so if you actually, I would say that if you want to show force, then you would probably have to vote for those officials that are leaning with what your views are. And that means paying attention at your local level, your state level, and your federal level about who are your representatives, because that is going to affect legislation. But then again, there's the Supreme Court, which those appointees are, they're for life. And at this point, I believe that there's more of a conservative lean on the Supreme Court. But when it comes to the real power in government, it's not the president. It's not really even the Supreme Court. It's Congress, and Congress being the Senate and the House of Representatives. Those are elected officials. Driving here, I saw signs for, someone to be governor. I mean, most people think it's up to the president and that's the big thing. But the reality is it's your elected officials, because those are the ones that are sitting in the meetings, introducing bills into the House. Those go to committees. I mean, that's how our government works. We don't have a monarchy. So if you really are strong about an issue and you really think, man, the government needs to do away with this, or the government needs to add this, that's the route that you take. Because if you go outside that route, then what? Are you going to be a militia then? Are you going outside of, you say, the government and the law? Well, I'm going to go outside the law. Okay, so what? Are you going to storm the Capitol like on January 6th to try to put forward what you want? I mean...
Okay, what does Romans 13 teach us about laws? That we are to follow the laws that our leaders choose unless they're against God, right? Or am I wrong on that?
I mean, you respect as long as it's not violating, I would say your worship or your love of God in a sense.
So if in Romans 13, if they say we got to do what our leaders in leadership say we have to do, but the Bible says if they don't choose God's way, if they are operating outside of God's way, we don't have to follow the law.
It doesn't say that.
Oh, well, what are we supposed to do if they don't follow God's way?
You render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and you render unto God the things that are God's. The Roman state was not following the Jewish religion. And Jesus Christ, when he came, did not say, hey, the Romans don't worship don't worship me, don't worship the Jewish God. Therefore, you don't need to listen to anything that the Romans say. You don't need to pay taxes or anything. Jesus' example was, again, you render under Caesar the things that are Caesar,
and render under things. God.
So I don't see the biblical mandate that if the state is not following the directives of the Bible, that I can just ignore the state completely and not take part in it at all.
Well, what does that mean then? What am I supposed to do if my leaders are anti-Christ? And they're going to make sure that they're going to go all the way with that baby. Everything of God. None, zip, zero, none.
Well, you need to hold your leaders accountable. We're not living in the Roman Empire where you didn't have any representation, really. I mean, if you were let's say you were a Jewish person living in Jerusalem, you had no influence on the Senate in Rome. The most you could probably do was get some influence on who the governor was that was put in there. But in reality, you don't have any say on who the next Caesar is.
Okay, let me ask you a question when we come back. Well, I'll ask it to you, and you can answer it when we come back. So, we ignore God then. We choose our government that we elect, which, by the way, could you use the word corrupt for our government?
I would say that there are certain elements that are corrupt.
Okay. So what do we do when that corruption is chosen over God? As Christians, is this time that we use force? Is this the time that we advance the kingdom? Or we listen to somebody that got voted on by low information voters? We'll talk about that when we come back. I'm Mac McKoy. This is Talk of the Heartland on AM 660 and FM 106.7 and all around the world at KCRO.com.
This is Steve Arterburn from New Life Live. Do you have any character-building people in your life? That's what I call the people that make your life difficult. We hate the fact that they're even in our lives, but without them, we'd never come close to what God wants for us. Tune in at 1 o'clock Monday through Friday as we answer questions on how to deal with some of the character-building people in your life.
When it comes to your home, NFM has it all. Find superior selection of furniture, home decor, area rugs and flooring, appliances, big and small, and smart home electronics, all in one store. The brands you trust are all here and backed by our low price guarantee with budget-friendly long-term financing available. Pick it up, have it delivered, or get it installed by experienced professionals. The choice is yours, right here at NFM.
Hey, this is Mac from Talk of the Heartland, and I want to tell you thanks for listening. I love this job, and I couldn't do it without you. And there's many ways to listen to us. You have Facebook. You have KCRO.com. Plus, you've got our, if I may say, world-famous app on your phone that you can hear us anytime, fully digital. And don't forget smart speakers like Alexa or Google. We just want you to listen. And no matter where you are when you're listening, at home, at work, or in the car, remember to write it down. We are AM 660 and 106.7 KCRO. And we want to hear what you think about what we do. So call me at 1-402-819-2666 or email me, Mac, like macaroni, Mac at KCRO.com.
We all worry, but Tuesday on Truth for Life, Alistair Begg explains why worrying is futile and unnecessary.
Since life does not depend upon stuff, Jesus says it's a dumb idea to worry about stuff.
So what's the alternative to worrying? Hear the answer as you study with us Tuesday on Truth for Life with Alistair Begg.
Truth for Life with Alistair Begg. Weekday mornings at 8 on KCRO. 660 AM in Omaha and 106.7 FM in Lincoln.
100 years KCRO.
Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 22nd of August, in the Lord's year 2022. I'm Mac McKoy, and this is the Talk of the Heartland. You've only got about 7 minutes left for you to dial in and win 4 tickets, a 4-pack, to the Collingsworth family coming to College View Church in Lincoln, Nebraska this Wednesday. Doors open at 6, starts at 7, and I would hope that you could call this number. We're still time. Janelle's still manning the phones at 402-422-1600. And we'll also be giving away tickets tomorrow if we still have some to give away. But I would appreciate it if you would like to see them free of charge. Give us a call, and we'll get you those tickets. All right, my guest today is Tony. He's the SDA pastor in Council Bluffs on Valley View Drive. 9:30 in the morning is Bible study, 11 o'clock is service. And we are going to run out of time for today, but I'm going to ask Tony to come back, and we're going to try to continue this conversation. In fact, if you listen every day, which I thank you if you do, you're kind of beginning to see a trend. And I promise you it won't be a long trend. Tomorrow we won't talk about this at all because we've got Theo from Texas, and we're going to do our Romans Bible study. But the question is this, and it's a tough question. And I don't know if you and I, if we had a 106-hour show, whether we could really get to a compromise that would be good for both of us. And maybe that's what's wrong with America. Here's the question. When is a Christian allowed to use force to advance the kingdom? Right now, we are talking about government schools. And my position is the Bible gets taught in school. I don't care at what grade you are. Now, if your child wants to opt out of it, that's fine. But we don't need to force it down them. But God's invited back in the schools for those who want to worship him through school. And you don't get to say, well, you know, that's separation of church and state. No, it's not. What is separation of church and state is if all of a sudden we had more Muslims in the Senate, in the Congress, in the administration, and then they would begin to change the laws to eliminate Christianity. And see, we're not asking anybody to eliminate their own religion. We're just saying we're going to teach Bible. Why do we get to do that? Because we're Christians and we're standing up. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Well, how about if every Christian teacher stopped teaching today, walked out and didn't come back? How would your school system be then? Stuck with a bunch of heathens. Okay, your position on this is what? You've got to. I don't agree with it, but you're thinking it through good.
First, I just want to say I appreciate that me and Mac are able to disagree here with civility.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have utmost respect for Mac, and I think he has the same for me.
Yep.
So, again, my position is that I do not believe that the solution is bringing God back into the public school system. I believe in a separation of church and state. And to sum it up, mine is if you're going to bring in the Christian God, then technically you're going to have to allow for other religions. And then you get into the question of which form of Christianity are we going to be teaching to people in, let's just go with your example of optional classes, which form are we going to get into teaching people? And I brought up, you know, are we going to do Arminian? Are we going to do Calvinist? What are we going to teach them?
Okay, so let's not go into taking Christianity apart and saying this or this or this. So if we let the Muslims or the Hindus or the Jews also have their religious class, is that okay?
I would say that if you want to have that optional class, then you need to allow for other faith expressions have their optional class. And so then that gets into a question of funding, because does the school system then have enough money to bring in, I guess you would have to argue, you'd have to bring in teachers of those religions, and you'd have to pay them. And so does the school system then have enough money to be able to allow for all those optional classes? And a lot of schools are underfunded to begin with, so I don't even know if they would have the resources to be able to effectively pull that off.
Maybe the reason they're underfunded is because God isn't in school.
I would say they're underfunded because most schools are funded. They're not the money that goes in to fund a school. It's not as if I pay my taxes and then it goes spread out throughout the state to the different public schools. It's usually done within a certain area. So if you have a lot of higher income people in a certain school district, then the amount of tax money that's going to that school is much higher than, say, if you have a low income area where there not as much tax money is going into those schools, hence why they're underfunded.
Okay, trick question. Whose money is it? Whose money is it that we're collecting and deciding how to divvy it out when it comes to government schools? Whose money is it?
Well, technically, we are using American currency, and if you're a Christian, you also believe that you have that God is over even your currency, those gifts in your life. But if you're not Christian, then you don't recognize that authority. But we are using the American currency, which is brought to us by the federal government.
Right, which is a ripoff.
Well, you got to have a currency of some sort, or else
you don't have to have corrupt people collect it and hand it out.
I don't agree with corruption, definitely, but if we don't have a system of money, are we just going to go back to bartering? I mean,
all right. Well,
I don't have a lot of sheep or goats, and I'm not good at making bread.
Pastor Tony from the SDA Church of Council Bluffs has been my guest today.